A waiter laughed at the obese woman on their first encounter, thinking it would be just another easy joke. Minutes later, he would bitterly regret every word he said. The Thursday night promised to be just another among many in Marco's life. A 28-year-old waiter working in a sophisticated restaurant in the city center. His shift was about to begin when he spotted the new customer entering the establishment. Sophia, a 32-year-old woman weighing 147 kilograms, walked slowly between the tables, her cautious steps betraying the constant discomfort of always being under other people's gazes. Her dark green dress tried to camouflage her generous curves, but it was impossible not to notice her voluminous body. Sophia carried with her not just physical weight, but the emotional burden of years of silent judgments and prejudiced looks. Each step seemed like a battle against her own existence, against the cruel beauty standards imposed by society. Marcos observed her every movement with a discreet and mocking smile on his lips. His eyes traveled over her body with a mixture of contempt and morbid curiosity. He had served hundreds of customers, but something about this woman made him feel a different kind of discomfort, an almost irresistible urge to ridicule her. When Sophia sat down, her chair creaked slightly under her weight. She nervously adjusted her dress, trying to make it cover as much of her body as possible. Her eyes, laden with deep sadness, avoided direct contact with anyone in the restaurant. It was as if she wanted to become invisible, to blend into the environment to avoid drawing attention. Marcos approached the table with a fake smile, typical of someone who serves without really wanting to serve. His notebook was already in hand, his eyes alternating between the notepad and her face, with barely concealed disdain. Sophia ordered her dinner timidly, almost whispering each word, as if ordering food was more an act of humiliation than a basic right. The waiter took the order, his lips trembling slightly to contain a laugh that seemed ready to burst at any moment. He walked away from the table, imagining jokes he could tell his co-workers later, without any shame or empathy for the woman he had just served. At that moment, no one could have imagined what was about to happen. The night had barely begun, and destiny was preparing a plot twist that no one expected. Sophia, apparently just another customer, was harboring secrets that would completely transform what seemed like an ordinary night. Marcos continued his routine, moving between tables, serving customers, completely unaware of what awaited him. His arrogance and contempt seemed to shield him from any deeper feeling. But the world doesn't always work as we plan, and some lessons are learned in the hardest possible way. The night continued, the restaurant buzzing with its usual sounds of cutlery, conversations, and ambient music. And Sophia, quiet at her table, waited for her order, with no idea of the transformation about to happen. The restaurant's kitchen was bustling with activity when Marcos delivered Sophia's order. Among the cooks, a whisper of malicious comments, sideways glances, and stifled laughter began. The work environment seemed to feed on that moment of veiled cruelty, where difference was a reason for mockery. Sophia ate discreetly, each forkful seeming calculated. It was not just a meal, but a daily survival act against constant judgments. Her 147 kilograms were the result of a story that no one there knew, a life of internal and external battles that no superficial glance could capture. Minutes passed, and Marcos continued his services, occasionally casting mocking glances in Sophia's table's direction. His world revolved around small cruelties, ephemeral moments of fun at the expense of others' suffering. He had no idea that his life was about to change completely. On the other side of the room, a man was watching the scene attentively. Formally dressed, with a dark suit that denoted power and status, his eyes did not leave Sophia. Each of her movements was studied, each detail registered with a surgical precision that went far beyond a simple curious look. The restaurant's environment continued agitated, waiters circulating, customers chatting. soft music in the background creating an apparently tranquil atmosphere. But beneath this surface, something different was preparing. An imperceptible tension for most was beginning to form, like a distant storm about to pour down. Sophia finished her meal, apparently oblivious to the looks and comments. Her posture, even with all the weight she carried, conveyed a dignity that few could understand. She did not apologize for existing, did not shrink more than necessary. Her presence, though discreet, was almost challenging. Marcos approached to deliver the bill, his movements still laden with barely disguised mockery. He did not realize that each of his gestures would later be evaluated. Each word would be recorded. His arrogance blinded him to the details, to the subtleties that could completely change his trajectory. The man in the suit continued observing, motionless like a statue. His eyes alternated between Sophia and Marcos, as if conducting a silent judgment. There was something in his gaze that went far beyond a casual observation. Each detail seemed to have a deeper meaning. At the moment Sophia took her purse to pay the bill, something different happened. A discreet gleam escaped from inside her purse, an object that went unnoticed by Marcos, but not by the man in the suit. A detail so small, but carrying with it the potential to completely change this story. The night was still beginning, and what seemed to be just another common dinner in a busy restaurant held secrets about to be revealed. Marcos continued his routine, completely unaware of what destiny was preparing. The man in the suit rose discreetly from his table, his movements calculated like a predator about to attack. His steps were silent, almost imperceptible among the busy restaurant tables. Sophia had not yet noticed his presence, occupied with putting away her belongings after paying the bill. Marcos continued his service, completely unaware of what was unfolding behind his back. His world revolved around small tasks, serving customers and making malicious jokes with his coworkers. He had no idea that each of his actions was about to be judged in the most severe possible way. The man in the suit approached Sophia, his imposing presence creating a shadow over her. When he finally caught her attention, a discreet smile appeared on his lips. It was not a mocking smile, but something that carried a complexity difficult to decipher. Sophia looked up, her eyes showing a mix of surprise and recognition. At that moment, something changed in the environment. The whispers that were once of mockery transformed into absolute silence. The waiters stopped their movements. The customers froze in their conversations. It was as if everyone intuited that something important was about to happen. The man extended a card to Sophia, which she received with trembling hands. Marcos, finally noticing the movement, approached to try to understand what was happening. His face, previously full of arrogance, now showed a mixture of confusion and apprehension. Sophia's story was far more complex than anyone there could imagine. Her 147 kilograms were not just physical weight, but carried with them a story of resilience, of battles fought in silence, of overcoming that few could comprehend. The man in the suit seemed to be the key to unraveling this mystery. One by one, the details began to reveal themselves. The card the man handed over was not an ordinary card. It had crests, official symbols that betrayed a significant authority. Sophia held it as if it were a precious object, her eyes moistening with an emotion that went far beyond what could be superficially seen. Marcos felt his world crumbling. Each joke, each mocking look, each moment of derision he had dedicated to this woman now seemed to transform into a sentence. His body began to tremble involuntarily, as if already intuiting what was about to happen. The entire restaurant seemed to have frozen in a single moment. Time appeared suspended. Each breath, each movement, each detail was charged with an almost unbearable tension. Sophia stood up, her movements now different. She was no longer the cornered woman from before, but someone who carried an impressive authority. The night was far from over, and what seemed to be just another common dinner was transforming into something no one could have ever imagined. Destiny was preparing its final move, and Marcos was about to discover the true meaning of judgment. Marcos's final destiny unfolded with surgical precision. Sophia, the 147-kilogram detective, transformed that moment of humiliation into a definitive lesson. Her legal advisor had already prepared all the necessary documents for the administrative and judicial process that would be brought against the waiter and the restaurant. The consequences began immediately. In a matter of minutes, Marcos was fired with just cause, witnessing the collapse of his career in front of all customers and coworkers. His eyes, previously full of arrogance, now overflowed with a mixture of terror and regret. The restaurant would be required to pay a significant fine and undergo a re-education program against harassment and discrimination. Sophia was not seeking only an individual punishment, but a cultural transformation in the work environment. Each document, each testimony, each piece of evidence had been meticulously collected. Marcos discovered that his levity would cost much more than just a job. His name would be included in records of professionals who practiced harassment, making it practically impossible to find work again in the restaurant industry. Each laugh, each malicious comment, now transformed into a real nightmare. The story quickly leaked to the media. Sophia was not just a victim, but a representative of thousands of people who suffer silent discrimination every day. Her 147-kilogram body became a symbol of resistance, breaking patterns and challenging established prejudices. During the process, it was revealed that Marcos was not an isolated case. There was a history of discriminatory comments in the restaurant, a toxic culture that would finally be exposed and combated. Sophia transformed a moment of potential humiliation into a victory for all those who had been judged by their appearance. The man in the suit, her legal advisor, remained by her side like a protective shield. Each movement, each word of Sophia, was calculated to demonstrate that the true weight was not in her kilograms, but in her dignity and inner strength. In the following months, Marcos would discover the true meaning of consequence. Without a job, without references, carrying the stigma of a harasser, his life would be completely transformed. The arrogance of a moment would destroy years of work and future expectations. Sophia, on the other hand, would continue her mission. That restaurant would be just another chapter in her journey of fighting prejudice. Her story would become an example of how true justice does not need violence, only determination. Destiny had prepared its most cruel and precise lesson. Marcos would learn the hard way that words have power, that gratuitous judgments exact a very high price. And Sophia would move forward, her body and soul stronger than any attempt to diminish her. The story of Sophia and Marcos reminds us that behind every look, every body, there is a unique story. What we judge superficially does not always tell us the whole truth. Discrimination does not choose victims, but rather cowards to practice it. Our prejudices are invisible cages that imprison us much more than those we try to judge. Sophia proved that true strength does not lie in physical appearance, but in dignity, in the courage to transform pain into power. Marcos learned the hard way that words have consequences. Every joke, every mocking look can be the beginning of our own end. Justice is not always immediate, but when it arrives, it is devastating. And you, who have come this far, what will your choice be? Will you continue to judge, or will you begin to understand?